Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Wholeness Campaign Podcast. This is Selena and Eric, your hosts.
Hey.
And we're here to talk today about the idea of poverty mentality as it relates to your healing journey. So I know for a lot of people, finances can be a big stumbling block when it comes to investing in yourself, getting healing, trying different protocols. And I want to kind of unpack some of that because I feel like we've learned a lot in this area in terms of, what you should and should not spend money on, some of it the hard way. But then some of this has been a journey for us realizing that the real cost of food is different than what we expected. And we actually have to adjust our mindset to what the real cost is. So Let's talk about all that, and then also we're gonna do a little tag of the congrats because Eric did just get a new job, and talk a little bit about God's provision and healing, and like the idea of we have a God that provides financially for us, and how we've been experiencing that lately. So let's jump in. I think just to start out, I'll say that in the very beginning, we started healing with a very different budget than we currently have. Probably a quarter of the size of what we have been experiencing. And so we kind of had to learn how to start with what we had. We experienced a lot in the beginning, getting random money from random places because we were still in school. And so money that would come in from, reimbursements for different things, or, we were in COVID, so we had all these like random stipends and stuff that. We had lots of experiences in the beginning of just random money, but our budget was like not clear at all. The interesting thing was we really had to make the choice before we even started GAPS, or, healing, or investing more in food, however you relate to it. We had to make the choice beforehand that we were willing to spend the money because our health was actually worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really where it comes down to starting at, because honestly, if we hadn't made that decision that, okay, is this a place where we want to actually invest our money? For us, it made sense because the alternative was actually becoming more and more expensive. Some of it was financial, some of it was just lifestyle. I mean, eventually, if I couldn't function, I couldn't work. So there's a lot of those pieces that we were juggling, but we really had to kind of grapple with our mind, like, okay, this is worth it, I remember the first time I did that, it actually had to do with going to that brain rehab center. And it was what we were looking at. The first rehab center we looked at was around $30,000 for like one treatment. And we didn't actually end up going with that place because we found a cheaper place that did the same stuff. But we did end up investing a large chunk. We got support from family members. But the mindset shift we had to have in that moment was that this would be worth it at any cost. Like, even if we had to go asking people for money, even if we had to go get a different type of job, that this would be worth investing in no matter what. If we don't really have our health, we're not really going to thrive in anything we do. So
I think what's coming to mind for me is that what it really comes down to is, what is your value?
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's pretty practical. We all have a different level of resources, or we all have a different amount of resources, financially, relationally. What I mean relationally is like you're making a certain amount of money, and your relatives are, and people are.
Right.
So who you have access to, who you can ask for help. We all have different
passive.
We all have a different array, like a
Yeah.
combination of what that looks like. So at the end of the day, I think identifying what you value most and then choosing to say yes to those things, because you're not able to say yes to everything. Like unless
Right.
you're a multi-millionaire, billionaire, maybe you can do all the things. But
Yeah.
for most of us that are,
You have to start somewhere.
yeah, middle class or lower middle class, which we were when we started for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about, what do I want to say yes to? And that means that I have to be saying no to things. So when you are saying yes to higher quality food, supplements, all that kind of stuff, that's a big yes. So that
Yeah.
means you kind of have to rearrange your budget. Like, for an example, when we were dating, before we really started this, is my mic still on?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
You're good.
Before we really started this journey and we were dating, I would take Selena out on dates, and we would spend $200-$300 on, or I would,
Yeah.
on like a dinner. I'd spend like $200 on a dinner. I really liked that experience of going. We'd go somewhere super nice,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, right? But I was saying yes to that at first, but eventually I couldn't say yes to that anymore, because that money was now going into our grocery budget and buying higher quality foods in bulk and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
you could still go on dates, but they just look different. So now we might go bowling, or we actually found this place that it has like saunas with like a TV in it, which we did recently.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. So it's just it's like as practical as looking at, what are your resources? What do you value? Saying yes to that.
Yeah.
But that means you're saying no to things. But I just wanted to kind of like
Yeah.
paint that foundation. But in that, there's also a place for not having poverty mentality, which is kind of where we want it. Once you have that practical,
that's a good
that foundation, now what does it mean to also not always feel like you're penny pitching, but believing God? Like, it's partnering the practical with also like the provision of God, and that we have a good Father who wants to meet all of our needs.
Yeah.
So if you're suffering,
no, keep going.
If you're suffering physically or mentally or emotionally, God wants to provide a way for you to access the healing you need. Yeah. And sometimes when we look at our situation practically in the natural, we might not see how that way can happen.
Right.
So what does it look like to know the numbers, know where we're at, but also believe God and search for more, the gaps?
Right. I think that can sometimes come across as like stupid, to believe for more and have faith for more. But I also think coming out of like a poverty mentality is so much deeper than what is actually the numbers. So I think what's interesting is you could have somebody who's lower middle class, like and have a mentality, like a wealth mentality, about life. So you basically have faith for things that, somebody who's really wealthy might actually not even have faith for. It actually comes down to your mentality. So it's like, the way I've heard it put before is, so much of it is mentality that you could actually be given the opportunities. The opportunities for provision could be right in front of your face, but because you believe this thing about yourself, believe I'm poor. It's so subconscious, but I'm poor and I'm not meant to be wealthy. I'm not meant to have enough.
Yeah.
There isn't enough for me. There's never enough. This like kind of like, I don't know, never enough mentality. It's really poverty mentality. Just this scarcity, this feeling like, oh, there's never going to be enough, so I have to keep things. I've got to hoard things. I've got to actually, what's interesting about poverty mentality is that you often end up spending more because you're living in fear, because so the money that you could have saved and invested wisely, like with a clean, clear mind, into the things that would actually give you life, ends up being invested in these little things that don't really matter, and it actually keeps you poor. So the mindset of believing I'm meant to be poor leads to this scarcity of feeling like you've got to preserve resources, instead of this freedom of feeling like I could take a risk here. I could try something, and this could actually like bless my life. And that gap can be really, really challenging to someone's healing process, because if you don't have like a vision for, and I think it's really hard with people who have been dealing with chronic illness for long periods of time to actually have vision for something bigger, but that it's really having that vision for a different life. Like Bill Johnson kind of talks about this like wealth mentality. If you can't envision yourself wealthy, and that's not so many people think that that's like a presumptuous thing, or like a
there's something
selfish thing, or there's something bad about that. But no, actually, it's completely neutral. Poverty mentality versus wealth mentality. It's really how you're choosing to view yourself. We're not talking about greed here. We're not talking about like there's unhealthy patterns that can come in both of these. But what we're talking about is the mindset that opens you up to potentially actually going after and receiving more in life.
No, I think people, because we're seeking wealth not just to be rich, just to be rich.
No.
You know what I mean? Some people might do that, like they just want the money for whatever. But what we're really talking about is seeking responsibility.
Yeah.
And seeking and acknowledging that we have certain needs.
Right. Believing that those needs are valid.
And believing, that our needs are valid and that they can be met.
And that you're worth actually.
You're not just an orphan. You're a son, you're a daughter. You have a good father in heaven who has unlimited resources.
Yeah.
And what good father wouldn't want to meet his kids' needs? What good parent wouldn't want to do that?
Well, and the interesting thing is, I think people have experienced this from their parents, and so they're going into life replicating this poverty mentality because they grew up with money being scarce, or they grew up around a mindset that there's never enough, and there's scarcity, and you're just going to be like one of us, and we don't really make a lot of money, and there's stress around that, and there's feelings of like unworthiness because of that, or they've had to choose the cheap route, and we just don't have enough money to pay for the expensive food. We don't have enough money to buy the things that actually could help us.
Yeah. I really think there's two folds to it. I think at least two things that are coming to my mind. The one is believing in a weird way that you are worth it. You do deserve it. That's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around, like that word deserve. Yeah. But that deserve comes from a place of identity of I'm a son, I'm a daughter. Right. So it's not this weird thing of like, because I'm so awesome and da-da-da-da. Right. It's like, no, you're a son, you're a daughter. Think of your son or daughter, or if you know what I mean? Like, they are worth that because of who they are.
Right.
So that's the one piece. And then the other piece, I think, is just acknowledging that it's gonna what comes with more resources and more wealth is more responsibility.
Yeah.
So I think some people don't think they're worth it or they deserve it, and then others don't want more responsibility
because maybe they don't believe they're capable.
Yeah, or they don't exactly. So it might be I'm not. Yeah.
So it's really I'm not capable or I'm not lovable
or worthy or whatever it may be.
It's
right?
really lovable, capable, right? Like if you don't believe you're lovable, you're not going to have the mindset that I could be given these things.
Yeah.
They're good things that I couldn't be given. Or if you're not capable, you don't believe you're able to actually go after these things. So it is a form of self-sabotage where you actually end up living in this self-fulfilling prophecy of, I don't think it's possible, and therefore I don't try. And I don't think I'm loved, and therefore I can't try
I think
to
you're
spend
right.
money on that.
That I don't think it's possible. I think I'm not capable is rooted in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think you're not capable of making that money or getting that job or taking that opportunity.
Totally.
So, dang, that's deep. What we're really dealing with here is I'm not worthy or deserving of this.
Yeah.
And I'm not capable or lovable, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Which, if you didn't know this, a lot of times we live out of our beliefs. So what everyone see, it's kind of like we've learned this diagram of a plant where everyone sees the leaves or everything that's above ground, which is all the external behaviors. That's how we're living. It's what we're doing, right? Whether they're negative or positive behaviors, helpful or hurtful behaviors. But at the root of that is really what we believe about ourselves. Yeah. And this thing that we're talking about, poverty mentality, it really is rooted in a belief system. The behaviors are self-sabotage, believing that you're just stuck, there are no opportunities for you, you just deserve the least. This is never. I could never afford that. I could never afford that. I hear people say that all the time. I could never afford that. And it's some of this is practical. Like, maybe okay, in this season I can't afford that. Yeah. But there's a different. You have to look at the layer behind it, because sometimes there's an emotional piece behind it, behind those same words. Two people could say the same words, and there's one person that's got this. Yeah. It's like a jab at their identity that I'm not that type of person, that I could never. Well, it's also the difference between saying, try this on. A, you say, I could never afford that. Or just B, facing reality. Hey, I can't afford that right now, but one day I will, or what could I do? Right. What could I change about my life? What could I do? What do I need to do? What steps could I take? Who could I reach out to? What could I do? The poverty mentality also keeps us from being able to get creative. Reach out to people, ask for help. Like, I'm not saying, I'm not saying you necessarily become like a GoFundMe page, but there's a reality that those pages make tons of money, and it's people who have chosen to get help and say, hey, I need help. Yeah. Will my community help me? And I see all the time, there's two sides of it. There's the person who doesn't ask and they don't get it. And there's a person who asks and they get it. Yeah. And there's they get it more than they could have even asked for. They find a way. And it's the mentality, because if you believe that it's out there, then you'll keep searching. Because you're living out of your belief. Yeah. So if you literally believe you'll never get it, you're not going to do anything to get it. Right. But if you believe that could happen, you're going to be open and look for ways where it can happen. We're not saying live in denial. You could say, hey, I can't afford that right now. Right. But also say, I could one day. Totally. I could one day, or what could I do to get creative to afford this in the near future? It's hard to do this. Yeah. So. Yeah, I think, we struggled a lot with poverty mentality in the beginning. And what's interesting is we had to actually start to have faith for more. We had to start to believe, okay, God is actually wanting this for us. Period. Point blank. He wants this for us. Yeah. He wants my healing. Yeah. He wants my wholeness. Okay. This is actually how I'm being led to do that right now. Mm-hmm. And so there's a place of also asking him, God for provision. Mm-hmm. There's just this place of seeking.
and seeking the open doors. Now, I wanted to share like a little bit of like what that process has been like for us recently, because I think we've had like kind of a cool testimony in that sense.
Yeah.
If you guys don't know already, that we recently went down to one income. So he is now like full primary. I used to work. Theoretically, we still kind of need the two incomes, but we have been kind of making it work off of one, and we believe that God's actually going to provide. So that was part of the step of faith.
Yeah.
Was that like this is the step that we needed for our family, and this is like the sacrifice we're willing to make for a lot of different things, like our mental sanity and all sorts of stuff. Hold on, let's pause.
Yeah. They were just filming real fast. We're almost done. Is that okay? Give us like 5 or 10 more minutes. All right.
Yeah.
No, it's...
So we kind of got this place where like, actually, we're just trusting God. Like, we don't really know how that extra income's going to make it up. If we needed to become a little bit more frugal, we still weren't willing to sacrifice our health. And so we were actually making adjustments to other areas of our life.
Yeah.
But kind of walk us through the process of like, what was your mentality when you applied for this different type of part-time job? And
I think in some ways what just came to mind was like, so there's a lot here. I'm just going to share my process, and maybe it'll speak to you, maybe it won't. But in a weird sense, like, so yeah, when you were working, when I was working, we were both making pretty good money as a family, right?
Yeah.
Like living,
we won't give numbers,
living
like
comfortably, like not really too worried about the budget. But it was keeping us in this rat race. In a lot of ways, you didn't have peace.
Because my job was very demanding.
Yeah.
And it was becoming more demanding with the baby.
So it could be very tempting to want to stay in there because of the financial freedom.
But the scarcity mentality.
But in some ways, it's literally, it was, in this case, it was actually poverty mentality to stay.
Yeah. Not for everybody, but yes, for us.
For us, it was, because the thought process behind that would have been like, this is the best it could get.
Right.
But then it kind of would have kept us in this loop.
Right.
Because we were like stretched capacity wise.
Yeah. Right.
Didn't have a lot of capacity to grow. So sometimes this is good. Sometimes in order to grow, you have to cut back a little bit. You have to clip the dead branches.
The dead raspberry.
Yeah.
By the way, I need you to do that.
Yeah. So it's like, in some ways, if we would have just stayed, we would have been at a good place, but it would have been really hard to grow more fruit because we were stretched. So it was almost like we need to cut temporarily to find something that works better for our family overall in the long run. Because a lot of this is the long game, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, we don't know what that's going to look like right away. We will kind of just be making it by on what I'm making, and we're just going to believe that God will provide. So
right. And it took a step of faith. The funny thing is, we didn't actually have the provision.
No, we didn't.
After I had quit.
Yeah, I had no idea.
The opportunity didn't come out. We couldn't foresee an opportunity. We actually weren't even necessarily looking. No. We were just kind of trusting.
Yeah, and I think that just takes practice, because for us, and we're not perfect at it by any means, but we've had other seasons where we've seen God come through. So you kind of build this track record with God, where the first time that happened, we were freaking out. It was very hard. But
like fully freaking out.
But as the situations come, as the next one appears, you freak out a little bit less, you trust a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, and it just becomes the normal thing.
Yeah.
Like you're just waiting for God. Like you just know. It's almost like anticipation. Like,
yeah, you could feel it. It's hard to explain, but you can kind of feel that.
And that just takes practice. That just takes time, right?
Yeah.
So with this one, it was like, you know what? It was almost kind of felt like a little bit of an adventure. I'm not gonna lie, of like, and I just knew it was what needed to be done. But recently, and then kind of recently, I saw this opportunity for a really great part-time role that is super congruent with my full-time role
Yeah.
And I decided to apply for it, and I got the role.
Yeah.
So
we're celebrating.
Yeah, we're celebrating because with this part-time role, supplementing what I'm currently doing full-time, they work super well together. So it's not like I'm doing two opposite tasks where like I'm working the day shift and the night shift and they're two separate jobs.
You're not like gonna completely wear yourself out. Actually, this is not like, it's not like that.
Both jobs are serving the same group of people. They're slightly different in some ways.
Because that could have been poverty mentality too. Of like,
Yeah.
all right, Eric's gonna work night shift and
no, I wasn't
go
just
deliver for Amazon and barely sleep, and we are gonna.
I had that thought.
We're gonna make it.
I had that thought though. I was like, worst case scenario, I'll work at UPS or Amazon.
But that's the thing is, I wouldn't have wanted.
My mind goes there, but I also tell myself, hey, like, wait, trust. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, sure enough, that opportunity presented itself. And then when the opportunity presents itself, you need to take the leap of faith. So that's a part of it too, is poverty mentality will keep you from taking leaps of faith. It'll keep you stuck because you'll doubt, or
you feel like there's not enough, and you feel like you can't. There's never going to be enough, so you stay where you're at. You're not going to take a risk. You literally don't take risks in poverty.
Well, there were some conflicts. Like I could see, like when I was even like there were some potential conflicts in timing things with the jobs, and it would have been easy for me just to say that won't work because of this and that, and just completely like, you actually did that. You were like, that won't work. That was her.
I know, at times, honestly, my initial thing is like, oh my gosh.
Because there were some potential conflicts, but faith also says, you know what? I'm just going to give it a shot anyways. I'm just going to knock on the door. And if the door opens, you're trusting. You can't just trust in your natural, what you see in the natural. You have to trust in more than what you can see, and believing that if this what is this, because God has like this bird's eye view, He can iron out all the kinks and all the things where you're saying, well, it won't work because of this or because of that. He could iron all that out, and a lot of times we don't know until we ask questions and until we're like in it. Yeah. So sure enough, all those things got ironed out.
You kind of have to yield to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, they all worked out. They all got ironed out. It was a process, but it requires you actually taking the leap of faith, letting go of that poverty mentality, the I don't deserve this, I'm not capable of it, and being like, if God has this for me, it's like our counselor just said, and this is hard, but it's like at some point you have to stop running from the life God has for you and just say, it's almost like, I want to receive, I accept, I embrace
the gifts.
I embrace the life God has for me. I embrace it, and I'm not going to run from it. I'm going to embrace it.
Good things, believing that there's actually good things out there for you, that God has like a good life out there, and that you're not alone. It takes faith to actually believe that, but it's not as hard as people think. Most of it comes down to your mindset. I think it's also hard when we're wrestling. It's the internal wrestle that's the challenge. It's like that, that Chinese finger trap. The Chinese. Yeah. I always think of that Chinese finger trap. The harder you fight it, you can't get that thing off. But it's the second you yield, you embrace your life, the reality, the responsibility, the hardship, the good, everything. That's actually where the grace is. Yeah. And it's like you just start flowing with the life that is in front of you. Right. Right. Wow. Congratulations, Eric. Thanks. Yeah. So we're celebrating this week because this is kind of we're celebrating God's provision. We're celebrating your willingness to yield and surrender to the process and take on more responsibility, which is something that you're learning how to embrace and step into actively. Yeah. And it's really cool to see you do that. And yeah, I just think I think it takes the openness of saying I believe that I am worth I'll be frank, I am worth the $1,000 a month grocery budget. Like that's
Yeah.
I'm worth that.
To God,
Like,
you are.
yeah, I'm
You're his
worth
kid.
that. So how does me and my life get into alignment with that truth?
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying every season's going to look different, but this is the biggest hurdle that I see for people, and it has nothing to do with the work. It has nothing to do with your current situation. What I'm talking about here is the mindset of believing that there's never enough for you.
Yeah.
And that hinders you from actually going after and receiving more.
Yeah.
And enough.
Yeah.
Because it's actually out there. It's out there.
So true.
Yeah. I could talk about this so much more, but I think this is good. We'll wrap up there. And
cool.
Yeah, we're excited for Eric. We're celebrating Eric. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you got any value out of it, please like and subscribe to this channel. It's our passion to walk alongside people as they heal and grow, inspires us, hopefully brings inspiration and hope to you. Thanks for watching.
Peace out.